Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon. Let's start something a little bit special this evening. A couple of weeks ago, I went over the Golden Demon winners this year, and I decided I want to take part in this. Well, I've wanted to take part in this for many, many years, but this time around I thought, why not actually try to make something special? So I went around and I thought, what can I do? What can I make that will stand out, at least in my opinion? So I decided on a project. The inspiration is this artwork here. Now, obviously, there's a lot of really cool, interesting bits in that I want to take inspiration from. I will never be able to do it perfectly or anything like that, but I'm going to do what I can in the manner that I feel comfortable with and to a standard I have not achieved as of yet. So to make this idea of mine come to life, I have to create a base, and I will be using this awesome little model set here as the main character focus of the piece. The first thing, let's just pop this open and take a look at what's inside and do some sub-assemblies of how we want this to come out, how it will be easiest to paint it, well, in my painting style or how I like to paint. Now for the Chaos Space Marine Dark Apostle, the actual mini for this little diorama piece that will be working on for the next months, hopefully just months, maybe years, who the hell knows. I will be using quite a lot of sub-assembly, so there's not really any pure assemblies going on here. I'm taking everything off the sprue, but I will be gluing fairly few bits together, mainly the cloak and the shoulder pads, because I want to be able to reach every possible nook and cranny without having to stretch anything that I can't stretch. By that I mean my painting muscles. I would like to have the option to paint where I won't even see, just better for the feeling that I have painted it. I'm starting with a little bit of a mold line scraper and then a fairly fine little nail polish thing. And I'm just trying to get everything smooth and looking well. Now I want him to be walking up some stairs, so this little pedestal of skulls and crap that he's standing on, we're removing that. I'm using both a knife and some clippers and just getting the underside of his foot very, very smooth. And then he looks great when he's walking up the stairs that we will be creating on the diorama bit that we'll make. Like I said, there's not a lot of sub-assemblies I'm going for, but the actual cloak I want to have in a whole unit, mainly because it'll help a lot with the blending of the colors later down the line, be it next week or in 3 months. I like to have this ready to be done when I start doing it. So I put the little bit of cloak that was on an extra bit, I glue these together, just so I have this ready and it looks nice once I start painting. Now I dry fit everything just to see if it will fit, just to see if there might be some problems down the line that I might have to face. And also at this point I realized I can glue the shoulder pads perfectly well on these two nooks from the cloak bit, and it won't get in the way of painting the cloak, it won't get in the way of painting anything else, because this all hides each other and it'll look really good to have this. And also it's a nice option to have a little bit of extra stuff that we don't have to worry about. Having the shoulder pads to the sides, it might be fine, but it's not necessary. Now for his two little chaos cultists, I kept them wholly assembled because they're quite simple. The only thing I left is the smoke from the little thing that he's waving around. And as you can see, there's a lot of sub-assemblies. The gun in the holster, the head, the smoke tendril thing, everything is in sub-assemblies, and I will just pick and choose what I'm painting, going for themes. The chest piece, the book and the hand. There might be some problems with OSL later on, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We will figure out where the light will hit. Even though they are not fitting together at this point, we can still make it work, quite simply in my opinion. Now, since all the sub-assemblies, and there weren't that many of them to be honest, are done, we have to start working on the base, because it feels like this has to have the same feel as the original artwork that I'm going for, or I'm inspired by. But before we start on that, I would like to point to the Patreon thing I had below, because I am a self-serving man, and this is a hobby that I'm trying to expand on a little bit more, do a little bit more for the channel, and by doing so, having a little bit more time and a little bit more fulfillment for myself in this niche of the hobby sphere. So by all means, check out the Patreon below and the other stuff that's there, and if you don't feel like it, then you don't feel like it. Maybe hitting the subscribe and like button is more your thing, and by all means, then do that. But now, since that's out of the way, let's go into the actual making of the base for this. And there's a lot of little bits there that I'm doing that's a little bit more complex than some of the other bases I've done so far. But I love making bases, so this was really my focus to begin with. Now let's start working on the base, and this is by far the biggest part of this video in my opinion, because we'll be using the base quite a lot to get the feeling of this diorama going. So I have this lid of something I can't remember, and I use this circular piece of plastic art. I didn't find my regular plastic art that is just smooth and simple. However, I found this brick texture one, and I think that'll work out very nicely for some sort of path that we might use a little bit later on. I have these little concrete slits that I bought at the hobby store. I have some tree bark, and we'll just be figuring out what we want to do, how we want to do it. I'm gonna make some stairs up to this little platform that I made using this little concrete slabs, and some milliput will be used here and there. Now I'm starting by putting just a little bit of super glue on this so we can figure out where we're gonna place it. This will be somewhat integral to make the 3D feel of the entire thing. It's good to have something simple, to have underneath something smooth, and we can build on top of that. Next we just start putting in the stairs, and it's just a little bit of super glue. It doesn't dry that quickly, so I can put down the stairs if I do it quickly enough. And even as you can see, I've already moved them a little bit because the glue is still drying, so I can scoot them over a little bit. Now for the bark, I shake the camera because I'm cutting quite a thick piece of bark. I'm using the knife, I'm using pliers, I'm using my hands and just breaking it apart. And we'll be using this to make some sort of extra look, a little bit more of a demon world, a little bit more of an interesting look to it. So putting a little bit of bark to the side so it's jagged and standing out, that was the idea I was going for, and I think I kind of, well, nailed it at the end of the video. It starts looking pretty damn good, if I do say so myself, but at this point it just looks weird. But you have to have faith in the process, because we have this ugly stage in every part of the hobby. Whether you're painting or creating a epic base or doing whatever, there's always this horrible ugly stage where you're just thinking to yourself, what have I gotten myself into? I don't have the talent for this. This is just bullshit. How do I do it? How can I get anything out of this? How did my previous project ever end up in a good place if I can't even glue this properly? But have faith in yourself, because later on, when it's all dried up and you've put on all the extra bits, all the gribblies, all the little stuff here and there, you come to realize, oh no, wait, this looks pretty darn good. Now after all of this glue has dried, and I'm using an activator quite a lot because I want to work fast, and all the bark is put down and I've put extra pieces, then I start putting a little bit of milliput just around the base and in the gaps and here and there. I'm putting down a little bit of glob of milliput here and there, like I said, and then I'm just taking this silicone tool that I bought off eBay years ago, moistening it up a little bit, and I'm dragging it from the smooth part into the bark, mimicking the feel that the bark has, which has this nice faux rocky texture once you paint it in the right color, and I want to keep that feeling. So I'm putting a lot of milliput. As you can see, I'm trying to hide all the cracks, making this look like a solid piece of rock. Now we're very fantasy-esque at this point. There's not a lot of 40k going on, and that's fine. I mean, it's word bearers. They are quite on the fantasy demonic side of 40k, but we're gonna add a little bit of more
structural integrity to this, something that feels a little bit more chaosy, a little bit more evil. So I'm putting down these spikes from Chaos Knight that I didn't use, and I'm putting down the chains from something that I'm not really sure of anymore, but the chains are good and they look well on it, so we're definitely using them. And we're putting this all over, and a little bit of hanging hooks, just a little bit of grippers here and there. And next we have to start working a little bit on the base to make that path look a little bit nicer. So we're putting some texture paint on both sides of the stairs and mixing it up all around just to tie everything together and to make it look a little bit more natural and a little bit more interesting.
Okay, the rough rudimentary base is ready, but it's missing a hell of a lot. So let's add a few details here and there, and that wheel with the eightfold star and the corpse hanging from it and everything like that. Let's make this painting come a little bit more alive, shall we?
Now that we have the rough look of the base ready, let's start adding a few GW details. So let's throw in some skulls. And I'm using the classic Citadel skull set, but I'm mainly using, or exclusively using, human skulls because I feel like this is a sacrificial hilltop mound altar thing. So we're just grabbing a handful of skulls, 15, 20 skulls or thereabouts, a good solid amount for any kind of Chaos Space Marine. And of course we have to scrape off all those mold lines and then go with the file and get it all looking smooth and nice. And then we just start gluing them down, both individually and also in clumps where they might have been collected for some nefarious purpose. Now I'm using pliers so I won't get all my hands covered in super glue. But of course, I got my hands still covered in superglue and managed to glue myself to the pliers, which was not as handy as I would have hoped. I'm just putting a little bit of a pile here, a little bit of a pile there, singular there, then we're pouring on some gravel. Nah, I'm kidding. Of course we're not going to pour it. We're going for finesse. So we're going to glue individual pieces of gravel here and there to make it look like some rocks. And the reason why I'm gluing them individually is because I want to have some sort of control over the finer details. We've done all the rough bits. We've done everything that's like that. Now we're just putting down some finishing touches. And that's why we are putting them individually where we want them, not too much, not too little. We don't want to crowd anything, so just a handful here and there. And I even removed some after the fact while the glue was still a little bit on the moist side. Now we have to do those pylons with the flame and the eightfolded star and the bodies hanging from it. And I feel this is quite an integral part of this base to make it look properly like I want it to look. So we're grabbing trash around the house and bits from other models, like some sort of half orb from Magnus, bits from a Chaos tank, some nails, a lot of nails because we're using the nails for the eightfold star, thing that broke off a Warcry set I have, and a chain because I love my chains or my chaos things. Just check out my knights, then you know I love my chains. I'm drilling some pilot holes for the nails. Now I'm using a small drill just to get the holes where I want them, being careful not to drill in my fingers, and I managed not to drill in my fingers, which is a win for me. Then we're just pushing the nails through, and even if they are warping the little ring that I have here, that's fine. Straight lines in a perfect circle is not something necessary for chaos. It's okay if it's dented. It even broke here, and I just went with it. It's a more natural feeling. It's gonna be mangled. It's gonna be gritty and old, and maybe it's been hanging up there for 100, 200 years. This is a chaos world, and they are infinite, so this can stay there for a long time. Putting a glue on a few nails so I can put the rod in that is going to be the actual stick that holds it up, and then I'm just spraying a little bit on it and it'll stick there. And then we're just going nail by nail, sticking to, spraying it on, doing it again and again until everything is sort of where I want it to be. Except for, of course, the one that fell off. I will just be gluing that to the stick, and it will be leaning down a little bit, like it broke off. There was maybe some big guy or big monster that was glued there, that was hanging there, and of course that had to give way at some point. Now for the flame, I just put a super glue on the thing that stuck up, an activator inside the flame, and Bob's your uncle. It sticks like there. Now this looks horrible, I will admit, but we have some work to do yet. This is basically just a skeleton underneath. Let's get some milliput, really mash it together to get some interesting putty out of it. This is the first kit that I'm using milliput on, and I really like this stuff. I will be using this quite a lot more. Make a small little sausage there, and we're sticking it underneath, and we're going to blend it up a little bit like we did earlier with some moistened tools, and we're just going to drag it up, down, and all the way just to get some sort of base going, which we will work on top of. And of course, like I said, we're using the tool just to make it everything a little bit tighter, a little bit more fitting. And then we're going to stick on those tank hooks that I found, and we're going to wrap the damn thing completely in chain. Why chain? Why not is the better question. I love chain on these guys, so we're using a lot of chain. And it just feels somehow right. I don't know why, but I think the end result will be okay. At least I'm hoping. And if it doesn't work, the milliput is still moist, the chain is not glued, I could always remove it. It's no really big problem there. I cut the chain into 3 pieces. One I wrapped onto the bottom, one I wrapped on the top, the other ones I hang here and there. Now I have to find out where I'm gonna put it. I make some sort of divot with the pointy bit of the cocktail stick, and then I just drill a hole right there, pumping a little bit of glue afterwards inside the hole, and then sticking it into the hole, and then putting a little bit of glue on the outside as well, and this should hold it there. At least I sincerely hope so, because this will get a lot of painting methods later down the line. And of course, if all my plans come to fruition, this will be traveling with me to England, to Golden Demon sometime in the future, and then it's quite necessary that it won't break overly too much on the trip, which will be interesting to say the least. Now, since the glue is still a little bit wet, I can fill it down a little bit. I want it hanging a little bit in the back, so this slight structure will be a little bit off center, which is fine and it's quite fitting. Putting down some more milliput on my cutting mat, and I'm really having a wet finger there, and I'm just making it super thin. Then I'm gonna cut it into small strips. Now these will be strips of parchment that I will hang here and there on the actual base, like he has these Oath of Moment, well, it's not Oath of Moment, some chaotic disgusting things hanging on him. I felt it fitting to have that also hanging on the actual base, like this is his place, and I will paint this like his, and I will put some writing on it. And after I put these little oaths down, these little scrolls, I put some chain offcuts and I glued them on the top, so it feels like these were nailed into the rock face. I even put one on the ground like it ripped and fell to the ground, and it's just lying there. And all these little details is what I think sells it. That's my idea at least, and that's how I feel, to have a lot of small details, not overly too much, but something that makes it feel alive. All of this was fairly smooth, so we have to work with that. This is an old thing, so I'm using a bit of typhus corrosion, and I'm putting that really heavy-handedly, both on the pole and here and there on the top, just really slathering it on to give it some sort of rough texture, to give it some sort of age, some sort of interest. And especially on the nails and the smooth plastic, that really has to have a lot of extra stuff added to it, so it looks a little bit more interesting, more worn, more real. Otherwise it just looks like a plastic circle with a stick in it. And then the same paint texture thing that we used on the base, we're going to merge that up into the pole, and even go a step further and just put globs of the darn thing here and there on the pole, on the circle, on the top, everywhere, just to give it some extra look. It needs that extra look to sell the point. And I think this will be quite an extraordinary base once it's painted up, provided I can do the idea I have in my head justice.
Okay, everything is ready as far as we're taking it in this video, but there will be videos in the future. I'm guessing a lot of them, because this is not a one-night paint job by any means. I'm going for as much focus and as much detail as I possibly can. But so far, let's take a look at what we actually have to work with. So the semi-reveal, let's call it that, shall we?
As you can see, I've put a little bit of a primer on them and a little bit of zenithal. It's quite a focused zenithal. I was focusing on where the light might actually hit them, both standing on the base, considering where the base will be lighting, the OSL from there, and the OSL from the book and from the power pack and everything like that. So it was a little bit of a focused OSL. Most of this will not be shown in the end result. It's just to give me the idea when I'm painting it where everything goes. And also the base, I gave that just a quick zenithal highlight, a little bit of a black, and then just a little bit of grey here and there, just to give me some sort of grid line to go for. Well, thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, for social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe and hit that little bell notification thingy and let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.